The dunes outside Dut Talkamar glimmered bronze at dawn, as though the desert were a vast, overturned brazier waiting for the first spark of daylight to set it ablaze. In a crumbling courtyard at the oasis edge, the old sage Idris rinsed his face at the cistern and listened to the quiet breathing of his 3 daughters. Maryam, the eldest, had strewn rolls of parchment about her sleeping mat. She always drifted off planning fresh inks and pigments. Safiya, the middle child, curled around a wooden flute she carved from a date palm branch, as if music itself were a talisman that could guard her dreams. Layla, the youngest, clutched a cracked clay lamp whose wick had long since disappeared. She swore one day to refill it with a flame bright enough to mend every shadow in the valley. Idris watched them, sensing the weight of blessings stitched invisibly into each heartbeat. Proof of the Qur'anic promise that among his signs is that he created for you spouses from yourselves, and he provided you with children and grandchildren. An Nahl 16, verse 72. Yet he also knew how easily such gifts could be forgotten once the wide world began whispering newer, gaudier promises. He spent the morning sharpening questions rather than knives. "What is a jewel worth if its owner never looks at it?" he asked while Maryam ground azurite in a mortar. "Less than a pebble," she answered. Safiya supplied the melody of her sister's reply on the flute, turning words into breath. Layla laughed and said the flute sounded like wind visiting every house in town to see whether gratitude still lived there. Idris nodded, satisfied. His daughters understood the metaphor, but the village beyond the courtyard walls had grown deaf over the years. Merchants now praised bright idols of hammered copper that rode in from the north on camel caravans, each statue promising fertility or fortune if only one would bow and barter a measure of dates. The elders recited ancient poems to explain the market's drift, claiming a man must grasp whatever rope dangles closest when the well is deep. Idris felt the rope in their parable fray beneath his fingertips. At midday, the sage received a summons from the town council. They had decided, in their restless pragmatism, to crown the largest copper idol with a wreath of desert lilies for the coming harvest festival. Such symbols gather travelers, the council chief insisted. Travelers bring coin, and coin keeps the well sweet. Idris recalled the next Qur'anic verse, how people worship things that have no power to provide sustenance for them from the heavens or the earth. An Nahl 16, verse 73. And he heard its warning flicker like heat above the council chamber floor. He bowed politely, offered the traditional blessing of peace, and left without giving consent. News of his silence spread faster than scorpions at dusk. Children repeated rumors that Idris would curse the festival. Camel drivers wagered whether he would smash the idol in the night. The daughters felt the air tighten, yet each reacted by leaning deeper into her craft. Maryam painted a scroll illustrating the lineage of mercy, Adam to Abraham, Hajar's desperate run between Safa and Marwa, the prophet, peace be upon him, raising his hands amid the valley of Taif, and she hung it outside their gate. Safiya shaped new reeds for her flute, searching for a tone so pure it might crack clay hearts the way a seed cracks stone. Layla spent hours polishing her empty lamp, murmuring that an unseen flame already lived there, waiting for its appointed hour. On the festival eve, the idol was moved to the village square. Torches ringed its copper form, lending it the illusion of breathing. Drummers urged the crowd towards something that felt like devotion but tasted faintly of fear. Idris and his daughters arrived in silence. He carried no staff, only a folded scrap of parchment inked with a single verse. Do not invent similitudes for Allah. Surely Allah knows, and you know not. An Nahl 16, verse 74. When the chief cried for offerings, a line of villagers stepped forward with sacks of cumin, skeins of dyed wool, even a bracelet unhooked in haste from a mother's wrist. Idris watched Maryam's fingers twitch toward her pigments, yearning to give color rather than coin, but she held back. Safiya lifted her flute, yet chose not to play. Layla's lamp remained unlit. Then a sand scar shuddered across the horizon, one of those sudden desert winds that writes its own decree against the sky. Torches sputtered. The wreath of lilies toppled from the idol's brow and scattered like startled birds. In the hush that followed, Idris lifted his voice, not loud, but clear enough that the dunes themselves seemed to incline an ear. He spoke of the generosity embedded in every breath, the way water finds a seed's hidden thirst, the way dawn keeps its promise to return even after the longest night. He reminded them that gratitude is a gate, and idols are locks rusted shut by self-interest. No thunder boomed, no bronze split. Only the wind spun his words outward, weaving them through the unsteady torchlight until even the drummers lowered their hands. The crowd dispersed uneasily, carrying both doubt and wonder home like twin grains of sand in the same pocket. The council delayed the offering, declaring they would reconvene after sunrise to weigh the matter in a calmer light. Idris thanked Allah for this sliver of reprieve, but he also sensed the tremor of an approaching decision. The village would either remember its covenant or seal its forgetfulness beneath a brighter, taller idol. He returned to the courtyard in the blue-black hush before dawn and found his daughters wide awake. Maryam unrolled a fresh canvas, blank, awaiting the story's next stroke. Safiya held her flute at the ready, lips poised for the note that begins a journey. Layla set her lamp upon the threshold, as if daring the first ray of sun to claim it. Idris realized then that the parable had already rooted itself in them. Their acts of creation were living verses, each one a reminder that true worship is gratitude in motion. Far off, a solitary drum tapped the first beat of morning. Idris closed his eyes and whispered, "La ilaha illa Allah," letting the declaration ride the rhythm of his heart. The wind quieted, listening. Dahat al-Qamar woke to the smell of dust and bruised lilies. In the mosque courtyard, the imam found petals plastered against the minaret's shadow and wondered aloud whether angels had passed overhead in the night. Merchants reopened stalls, though fewer idols glittered on their tables. Some had hidden the statues beneath woven rugs lest the sage's warnings chase customers away. Others displayed them defiantly, adding silver sparks to the copper curves. For what is devotion compared to profit measured by the armful? Idris entered the marketplace not as an oracle, but as a father buying bread. His daughters trailed him, Maryam clutching a jar of indigo, Safiya twirling a new reed, Layla balancing her lamp on her palm the way moonlight balances on water. They felt gazes prickle their backs, gratitude and suspicion, admiration and resentment braided into a single stare. Near the well, a youth named Bashir called out, "O sage, show us a miracle that proves your words." Laughter bubbled among his friends like vinegar spilled on stone. Idris answered with a smile soft as date honey. Miracles occur whenever a heart recognizes its own beating. The youth scoffed, yet the smile unsettled him more than any thunderbolt could have. A traveler from Basra arrived at noon, leading a caravan of spice mules whose bells chimed a note darker than Safiya's flute could match. He wore a sash embroidered with tiny golden idols, each a trinket for sale. The council chief greeted him eagerly, seeing in the traveler's pack a chance to outshine the sage. A bargain was struck. The traveler would donate his largest idol, a polished obsidian figure with eyes of amber, in exchange for exclusive rights to the festival stalls. Word of the pact spread, and excitement swelled like a desert flash flood, swift and heedless of its own depth. That evening, Idris gathered his daughters beneath the lone acacia behind their home. Lantern lights splashed saffron across the sand. He unfolded Maryam's first scroll, the one showing Hajar's frantic sprint between Safa and Marwa. "Here," he said, tapping the painted well of Zamzam, "is the pulse of reliance upon Allah." Hajar ran, yet she trusted. The water came not from the idols of Mecca, but from the mercy of the most merciful. Maryam traced the brushstrokes with reverence. Safiya played a low, aching note that lingered like twilight. Layla tilted her lamp toward the breeze, hoping a stray spark might leap into its hollow core. The council announced that the obsidian idol would be unveiled at dawn 2 days hence. In preparation, workers erected a dais taller than any rooftop in Dahat al-Qamar. Cloth banners the color of pomegranates fluttered against a sky that seemed suddenly too small. Idris walked the perimeter at night, counting hammer blows and whispered prayers offered to a stone that could not hear. He debated whether to speak again or let silence testify. Meanwhile, his daughters chose action. Maryam painted a second scroll, depicting a market where every stall overflowed with blessings, handfuls of shade, goblets of forgiveness, sacks of patience measured by the handful. Above it all she inscribed, in calligraphy bold as sunrise, the prophet's words, "Whoever is not grateful for the small will not be grateful for the large." Safiya crafted a melody to accompany the scroll, a tune that rose and fell like breath climbing stairs. Layla polished her lamp until it caught starlight even when no stars were visible. They carried the scroll to the central square at dawn's first blush. Safiya played. Maryam unfurled the parchment, and Layla held the lamp high though it remained unlit. Villagers paused mid-stride. Children stilled. Even the spice traveler, busy counting coin, turned his head. The melody coiled upward, wrapping the banners, brushing the dais, slipping beneath the obsidian idol's velvet covering. A hush rippled outward, and for a heartbeat Talkamar remembered itself, a settlement carved from gratitude long before copper idols lined its roads. Bashir, the skeptic youth, felt his throat tighten. He stepped forward, tears inexplicable, and asked Idris, "If the most merciful provides all, why do we still hunger and thirst?" Idris placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Hunger reminds the tongue to praise before the first bite. Thirst teaches the lips to shape the word Alhamdulillah when water meets them. Even need is a mercy, because it opens a door arrogance would keep shut. The spice traveler laughed, scattering the fragile silence. "Pretty words," he said, "but markets trade in metal, not metaphors." He swept back the velvet, revealing the idol, obsidian so polished it captured the dawn and trapped it. The crowd gasped. Some bowed instinctively. Coins clinked. The melody faltered as Safiya's breath caught. Layla stepped up beside the traveler, lamp in hand. She whispered, "A flame can show whether a jewel is glass or true. May I?" Without waiting, she struck flint to steel. A spark leaped, at last, and the ancient wick inside the lamp sighed into amber life. Layla tilted the lamp so its light kissed the idol's surface. Obsidian swallowed the glow without reflection, its blackness absolute. Gasps became murmurs. Someone muttered, "A stone so dark devours even fire." The traveler's smile slipped, replaced by a flicker of doubt. Idris bowed his head, not in worship of stone, but in gratitude that Allah's signs could appear even in a child's simple act. The crowd shifted, undecided. Above them, dawn spilled a second, brighter wave of gold, and for a moment the idol looked less a god and more a mirror of every unspoken fear. The sun climbed higher, draping Talkamar in a brilliance that felt all wrong, as though daylight itself had been bartered away for a shine that could never warm skin or wheat. Women hauling water from the well blinked at the sudden unease, and a donkey braided shadows that would not stay still. Idris sensed his neighbors drifting between two magnets, one tugging them toward gratitude, the other toward glitter, and he feared the brittle piece might shatter with a single careless clang of coin. Rumor blew across the bazaar like an unlatched door banging in wind. The council planned a grand procession. At midday, they would hoist the obsidian idol onto a cedar platform, march it the length of the fountain road, and crown it with a necklace of hammered dates, each gold link representing a promise of prosperity. Riders raced ahead to spread word, so the caravan from Basra could trumpet its role in the ceremony. "This will fatten every purse," the traveler boasted, rubbing the idol's flank the way gamblers stroke dice. But on his fingertips, Idris saw a thin dust of doubt, black and fine as soot. Maryam, Safiya, and Layla watched from their gate as men erected archways of woven palm fronds, then sprinkled flower water to tame the dust that would rise when the drums began. The sisters spoke little, each listening instead to the quiet counsel of her craft. Maryam inhaled the mineral tang of crushed malachite, thinking how pigment always starts as common earth before light gives it worth. Safiya tested reeds, hearing in their hollow throats a reminder that music is nothing until breath makes it merciful. Layla polished the lamp's new flame into a steady ember, teaching it to survive wind by dancing with wind rather than resisting. Idris studied them, recalling the prophet's words recorded in Sahih Muslim. "Every one of you is a shepherd, and every one of you is responsible for his flock." He realized shepherding, in this moment, meant trusting the flock's own footing on the mountainside rather than fencing them inside fear. So he placed a hand on Maryam's shoulder. "Your color," he said. On Safiya's brow. "Your sound." On Layla's lamp. "Your light." Then he stepped aside, leaving the courtyard open. When the first drum thumped, crowds surged to the main road. Bashir, now wearing a sash of bright indigo, Maryam's dye, traded days ago for pocket bread, strutted near the head of the line, determined to outsing any hesitation inside him. A quartet of council stewards lifted the idol on its cedar platform. Dust plumed at their sandals, and for a heartbeat the stone seemed to float above earth like a dark moon in daylight. Safiya raised her flute. The reed's mouth tasted of olive oil and night prayers. Her first note dripped into the drumbeat, the way a single tear alters the flavor of soup for everyone at the table. It was not loud, but the pitch threaded itself through rib cages until even the drummer faltered, adjusting pace to follow a tune he did not yet know. Children pressed closer, expecting spectacle and finding instead a question shaped in sound. Maryam stepped past the threshold, holding an unfurled scroll taller than herself. On its fresh parchment, she had painted a path lined by lanterns made of verses, fragments of Surah An Nahl. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, spiraled into shapes that evoked moons, seeds, and wide-open eyes. The scroll captured sunbeams, so letters glowed like gold leaf though she had used no gold at all. She planted the scroll against the fountain wall where everyone had to pass. One by one villagers slowed to read, lips moving as they traced the painted ayat with fingertips still sticky from morning figs. The traveler from Basra frowned. This was not the spectacle he had sold. He motioned the drummers to strike harder, but Safiya's melody wove between their hits, bending their force into syncopation. Dancers stumbled, uncertain which rhythm demanded allegiance. All at once Layla darted forward, lamp raised. She did not thrust it at the idol, no dramatic clash of light and dark. She simply set it on the dusty stone verge where children's feet scuffed sand into tiny twisters. The flame, cupped by a breeze that should have snuffed it, flared brighter. Its light brushed ankles and faces, revealing smudges of fatigue beneath festival paint. A child knelt, mesmerized, and whispered, "It looks like a piece of dawn we can hold." That whisper was small enough to slip under every boast the traveler had spoken. He felt the crowd's gaze drift from the idol's glassy eyes to the living fire in Layla's. Panic pricked his scalp. He clapped his hands and shouted, "Forward! Show the gods you honor them." But his voice cracked on the word gods, and the crack echoed longer than his command. Then Idris spoke, not from a platform, but from ground level beside the well. "O friends," he said, quoting Surah Ibrahim, "remember the favors of Allah upon you. If you count them, you cannot number them." He did not berate the idol or its merchant. He offered inventory, breaths, pulses, grains of barley, the unseen electric leap of a heart remembering a name. His tone was so ordinary that people leaned closer to catch marvel in what sounded like market gossip. The trickle of the fountain punctuated his words the way calligraphers let empty space define curves of ink. Bashir took 3 uncertain steps toward Idris. The indigo sash lost some swagger. "Sage," he murmured, "what if we honor both, stone and scripture? Dual rivers feed a garden better than one." Idris smiled, though sadness flickered behind his eyes. "A river of mercy cannot mingle with a mirage and still quench thirst," he answered. He pointed at the obsidian idol's unreflective skin. "See how it drinks light, yet gives none back? Gratitude is a mirror, Bashir. It returns radiance to its source." A hush rolled through the procession. Drummers lifted sticks, yet did not strike. Stewards holding the platform shifted weight. Cedar groaned where shoulders faltered. In that pause, Safiya's music floated upward into something like prayer. Maryam's lantern scroll caught the noon sun, igniting the painted verses until the letters seemed to flame. Layla's lamp glowed steady as a heartbeat. 3 threads, sound, color, fire, braided into a single rope invisible to eyes yet undeniable to souls. The smallest child in the crowd, she could not have been 5, walked to the platform clutching a clay doll. She placed the doll at the idol's base, hesitated, then retrieved it and carried it to Idris instead. "For the true river," she said in a voice too clear for argument. Mothers gasped. Fathers blinked as though something lodged behind their ribs had shifted. The obsidian idol slipped. One steward's grip failed, a shoulder sagged, balance tilted. The stone struck cedar, cracking the plank. A reverberation like distant thunder rattled windows. Dust puffed, and lilies on the waiting garland shivered petals into the air. No one screamed. They only watched as the platform settled crooked, idle leaning askew, neither shattered nor triumphant, just heavy. The traveler cursed, reached to steady his merchandise, and burned his palm on sun-hot stone. Pain tore a yelp from his throat. He staggered back, hissing oaths that felt suddenly childish against the hush that followed. Blood from his palms spattered the idol's flank and slid down in thin streaks, only to vanish against the black surface. A woman whispered, "It drinks even blood." With that murmur, the spell of novelty fractured. Merchants who had displayed smaller idols quietly tucked them under blankets. Buyers fingered coin, but let it fall back into purses. Bashir stepped beside Idris. His lips trembled, and he spoke a single Arabic phrase he had not voiced since childhood bedtime prayers. Astaghfirullah. Idris answered with Wa alaykum assalam, folding the boy into a brief embrace. Bashir's friends saw humility replace swagger and found themselves craving the same cool relief, like men who had drunk brine by mistake and only now recognized thirst. The council chief, red-faced, tried to salvage order. "We proceed," he barked, "for commerce, tradition, civic pride." But pride sounded brittle. A desert breeze tugged at the banners, snapping cloth loud enough to mimic applause for some unseen performer. The chief repeated himself weaker. No echo rallied to his cause. Idris lifted Layla's lamp. "O people," he called. The Quran reminds us in Surah Al-Ashr. "O you who believe, fear Allah, and let every soul look to what it has sent forth for tomorrow." He tilted the lamp, so flame shone across faces. "What will we send forth? Stone that drinks light, or light that multiplies?" Long seconds passed, heavy, breathable. Then a steward set his corner of the platform down. Another followed. The cedar slab touched earth with a soft sigh of resignation. Someone in the crowd knelt, forehead to dust, neither to Idris nor idol, but to the one who made dawn. Others knelt beside him. The council chief's voice guttered out like a torch starved of oil. Safiya's music changed key, rising hopeful. Maryam rolled her scroll halfway up, then unfurled it again, this time upside down, letting verses tumble, suggesting that mercy is in motion, not fixed lines. Children clapped. Even the travelers stood still, palm throbbing, watching blood bead at the cut edge of broken cedar, a reminder that every trade has its price. Idris felt tears he did not know he carried. He caught them on the tips of his fingers and whispered, "Alhamdulillah," because gratitude wears many cloaks. Paint flecks, reed breath, lamplight, tears. He glanced at his daughters. In their eyes he saw that the parable's seed had split the soil. Now its shoot reached for sky, seeking the rain of recognition among his people. That night, no torches ringed the idol. It remained on its toppled platform, looming but unloved, like a gate left ajar to a courtyard no one wished to enter. The moon, a silver date pit in the dark, cast pale mercy over the square. Idris and his daughters returned home, sandals scuffing soft rhythms in sand. Behind them followed Bashir and 3 friends, asking nothing, needing only the nearness of a story still unfolding. In the courtyard, Idris poured water into a brass bowl. Bashir washed the traveler's blood from his hands, and the water carried the stain into thirsty soil where night lilies would bloom. Safiya offered the boy her flute for a moment. He could not coax music from it, but found comfort in the effort. Maryam drew quick sketches of hands releasing idols into rivers, of rivers lifting lanterns upstream. Layla trimmed the lamp's wick, feeding the flame a whisper of oil. They ate bread with olive paste and laughed, gently, reverently, at how silence could be the loudest triumph. Idris recited a brief dua. "O Allah, make us among the grateful," and each heart answered a quiet Ameen. Beyond the courtyard wall, a single drum sounded then ceased, as though someone had lifted a finger to their lips, and the whole village obeyed. If the caravan departed in the night, no hoofbeats disturbed the sleepers. If the merchant packed his idols and rode for a town more willing to barter light for shadow, no one noted the hour. Daha Talkamar rested under a quilt of cool stars, every grain of sand humming with the day's unspent astonishment. In one home after another, parents whispered to children the ayah Maryam had painted, "Allah guides to his light whom he wills." The words fluttered through dreams like lantern moths, seeding brightness behind shuttered eyes. Yet Idris knew dawn would test the newfound hush. Markets reopen, coin winks, forgetfulness lies in wait like a fox near a henhouse. The parable is not a single turning, but a road of turns. Still, tonight a small province of gratitude had been mapped, and once a map exists, travelers appear. He whispered to the stars, La ilaha illa anta, and felt somewhere beyond sky a mercy large enough to cradle even obsidian. The breeze replied, rustling acacia leaves like pages turning themselves. Idris closed his eyes, and for the first time in many moons, sleep came to Da Talkamar without bargaining for entry. Morning shimmered into Daha Talkamar with a hush so delicate that even the sparrows seemed reluctant to pierce it. Wind combed through date palms, tugging away the last threads of night. Idris woke before the call to prayer and found that the lamp Layla kept by the threshold still glowed. It's what barely a whisper, yet steady as a promise. He marveled that such a small flame could outlast fatigue, sand drafts, and doubt, and he felt the Qur'anic verse bloom again inside him. Allah guides to his light whom he wills. In that instant he understood guidance as a river whose source hides in the unseen and whose mouth is gratitude opening across the heart's shore. He stepped into the courtyard to wash for far. Maryam sat cross-legged under the acacia, eyes rimmed by sleepless determination, sketching a new scroll. She brushed cinnabar and indigo into crescents that merged and re-merged, cycles of moon and sun revolving around a blank center she refused to fill. Safiya, wrapped in a woven shawl the color of morning clay, tested a reed flute so soft it could have been a dove's coo. Layla crouched beside her lamp, dripping oil one drop at a time, murmuring lines from Surah An on the way some children recite fairy tales. Idris sensed in them not weariness, but a readiness sharpened by yesterday's tremor, the same way steel becomes a blade by surviving fire. When the muezzin's call drifted down from the minaret, the sisters lifted their eyes. Dawn's first gold brushed the courtyard wall, illuminating Maryam's unfinished center. It glowed though pain had not touched it. Idris felt the urge to name it miracle, then remembered his own counsel. Miracles are hearts recognizing their own beating. He instead named it reminder. The family prayed. In the bow of prostration, Idris thought of the copper idol still slanting on its broken dais, and he begged Allah to replace every gleam of false devotion with a single drop of sincere repentance. Across town, the council chief barely slept. Coin clattered inside his ledger like stones in a jar, each metallic ring tallying the taxes that would evaporate if the festival collapsed. He blamed Idris, and by dawn's rose he convinced himself the sage's daughters were conspirators unchecked by village law. He summoned 2 guards, men paid more for muscle than conscience, and ordered them to bring Idris to the council hall for a rational discourse on civic obligations. The guards found the courtyard gate open. Idris sat with a pot of mint tea, stroking dust from a leather-bound mushaf older than the village itself. He greeted the men with salam and poured 3 ceramic cups. Stiffened by orders and wary of hospitality, they declined. Idris did not insist. Hospitality demanded generosity without pressure. He motioned for them to state their purpose. The taller guard shuffled. The shorter read from a folded parchment that accused Idris of inciting public unrest, obstructing trade, and, most damning, diminishing communal morale through subversive symbolism. Maryam's brush paused mid-stroke. Safiya's flute expelled a note like a sigh. Layla's lamp flickered. Idris listened without visible concern. When the reading ended, he asked if the parchment cited Qur'anic law or village custom. The guards, trained to carry swords not scripture, shrugged. Idris nodded and closed his mushaf with reverence. He stood. I will come, he said, for inquiry is a door to truth. He requested, however, that his daughters accompany him as witnesses. The guards, eager to finish the chore before sun glare thickened, agreed. A small procession formed. Idris, daughters, 2 guards, and Bashir, who had arrived to deliver figs for breakfast and refused to leave the sage's side. Along the street, villagers peeked from doorways, each face etched with yesterday's astonishment. Some offered nods of respect. Others looked away as if gratitude were contagious and they feared catching it. The procession reached the council hall, a mud-brick building whose facade boasted faded mosaics of legendary traders. A lone cat sprawled on the sill, indifferent to human urgency. Inside, the air smelled of parchment, heated ink, and worry. Counselors hunched around a cedar table, no longer the confident stewards of commerce, but merchants caught between ambition and awakening conscience. The chief rose, chin squared as though wearing invisible armor. He addressed Idris with politeness sharp enough to cut. Respected sage, we welcome your wisdom, But yesterday's events jeopardized our livelihood. Pilgrims not only bring coins, they carry tales. Should Daha Talkamar's tale become one of discord, caravans will veer elsewhere. Idris bowed slightly. And what is discord, if not hearts beating out of rhythm with gratitude? The chief's jaw tightened. One counselor, a woman named Fatima who sold spices near the well, cleared her throat. "Sage," she said, voice tremulous, "I dreamed last night of a river made of light. It flowed through the bazaar and turned every idol to clear glass. Yet I woke to find the obsidian idol unchanged. What does such a dream signify?" The hall fell still. Idris let the silence deepen. It became a well from which courage could be drawn. "Perhaps," he replied, "it signifies that Allah plants rivers in our sleep, so we may seek their source while awake." He turned to the chief. "Instead of binding the village to stone, let us open a channel for that river, teach pilgrims of our hospitality, our markets of honest measure, our children of gratitude's inheritance. Such stories will lure more caravans than any idol can." The chief scoffed. "Poetry fills ears, not coffers." He signaled the guards. "We must vote now." He proposed a decree banning public performances without council approval, Maryam's scrolls, Safiya's music, Layla's lamp demonstrations. A murmur rippled among counselors. Some nodded reluctantly, others exchanged uneasy glances. Fatima lifted a finger. "May we invite the imam to advise? The Quran must guide decrees touching faith." The chief resisted, but protocol allowed the request. A runner fetched the imam, who arrived breathless yet serene. He listened to the accusations, then asked Idris to recite any verse he deemed pertinent. Idris chose Surah An Nahl, the very passage the parable rested upon. They worship besides Allah things that own no provisions for them from the heavens or earth, nor can they. So do not strike similitudes for Allah. Indeed, Allah knows, and you know not. The words poured into the chamber like cold water over heated iron. The imam closed his eyes and whispered true beneath his breath. A vote proceeded. 6 counselors opposed the performance ban. 4 supported, 1 abstained. The chief's decree failed. He slammed a ledger shut. "Then commerce must salvage itself," he said. "We will borrow from the caravan to erect a grander pavilion around the idol. If pilgrims cannot be coaxed by spectacle alone, we will add comfort, shade, and song-approved song." His gaze skewered Safiya. "Young lady, we may yet employ your flute, provided you play what we select." Safiya met his stare with calm. "Music chooses the heart it serves," she said gently. The chief waved dismissal. Meeting adjourned, Idris and his group exited. Mid-courtyard, they found the caravan master, bandaged palm, eyes haunted by recent failure, negotiating with laborers over pavilion costs. He caught Idris's glance and smirked. "The wheel turns, Sage. You slowed it, but wheels crush what stands in the way." Idris answered only with salam. That afternoon, clouds gathered, rare low, gray giants lumbering from the west. Children pointed, uncertain whether to pray for rain or fear storm. Wind kicked sand into helixes, awnings snapped, camels groaned. Idris saw in the sky a reflection of the village's turmoil, bright hope tangled with looming consequence. Maryam hurried to affix her unfinished scroll to the courtyard wall. She sensed rain could blur pigment into new shades not of her choosing. As she climbed a ladder, the first fat drop struck parchment, blooming crimson rings around cinnabar moons. She gasped, nearly losing balance. Bashir steadied ladder rungs, his indigo sash fluttering like a flag of apology. Together they lashed the scroll under clay eaves. Safiya gathered instruments inside. The reed mouthpieces tasted of salt carried on storm breath. Layla sheltered her lamp beneath Idris's cloak, trusting its flame to savor the tempest rather than flee it. Rain fell not as drizzle but as a drumming herd. Dust turned to fragrant mud, transforming alleyways into braids of red clay. Merchants scrambled to shield wares. Mothers laughed, then cursed as laundry darkened. Children splashed in puddles, cheeks shining with unearned delight. And in the central square, the obsidian idol glistened, the first true water it had ever felt. Lightning cracked behind the minaret, illuminating an uncanny sight. Droplets struck the idol and skated down its face like tears, leaving pale streaks where rain washed blood residue to reveal a network of hairline fractures. The crowd gasped. Water crept into fissures. A sharp thunderclap reverberated, and a long, thin shiver raced through stone. A shard the length of a forearm sloughed off, thudding onto soaked cedar. No one touched it. Rain hammered louder, as though sky itself condemned illusions of permanence. Safiya felt music swelling in her chest, urgent as pulse. She raised her flute just outside the courtyard, ignoring slammed shutters and council guards dashing for covering awnings. Her first note rose like a crane ascending storm lift, cutting through thunder to reach ears desperate for meaning. La ilaha illa Allah, she sang through breath alone, each interval a declaration of oneness. No rival, no pair, no co-ruler. The melody spiraled along streets, carrying a verse heard only by hearts. He merges the two seas, one fresh, one salty. Between them is a barrier they do not transgress. People stepped into rain to listen, faces lifted, letting water baptize memory. The council chief, miserable under a leaking awning, watched droplets pool around the idol's dais, fearing that each crack signaled prophet escaping. He ordered laborers to haul tarpaulins and rope. They balked. Lightning still licked the sky. In frustration, he sprinted toward the pavilion foundation, boots sloshing. Halfway he slipped, hitting mud so hard breath exploded from his lungs. When he rose, his robe clung heavy, and the obsidian shard glared at him like a fallen verdict. By dusk the storm drifted east, leaving crystal drops trembling on palm fronds. Air smelled new, like pages just opened. Daha Talkamar emerged cautiously, counting storm losses. 2 tents collapsed, 3 cargo crates drenched, but wells refilled, cisterns singing. Children scooped handfuls of rainwater to insects thirsty since last season. Elders thanked Allah for mercy disguised as deluge. Idris and the daughters walked to the square. The idol leaned further, cracked spider webbing across its surface. Yet villagers no longer crowded to worship. They studied it as they might a peculiar boulder, interesting but irrelevant. Fatima approached Idris. "The river in my dream," she whispered. "I think it just rained." Idris smiled, rainwater beading in his beard. "Rivers come in many forms, sister. Some ride clouds." The merchant emerged from his tent, bandaged hand shielding eyes. He surveyed damage, silk soaked, spice bags waterlogged, and rage flared, volcanic. He strode before the idol, brandishing a dagger used to cut rope. "You," he roared at Idris. "Your tricks summon storms and thieves of commerce." He raised the blade as if to carve authority from air. Guards reached for swords, too slow. Layla stepped forward first, lamp in both hands. The flame within had survived the torrents, was protected by glass now speckled with raindrops. She held it between merchant and sage. The merchant froze, transfixed by improbable fire. Water gleamed on the dagger's edge. A drop slid toward the hilt, paused at steel's cusp, then leapt straight onto the lamp's glass, sizzling harmlessly. In that smallness something inside the merchant, fear, greed, grief shuddered. His dagger lowered, slipping from numb fingers into mud. Silence swallowed the square. Idris spoke softly. "All his light is not for sale, nor can daggers dim it." The merchant collapsed to his knees, palm throbbing beneath damp bandages. Tears mingled with rain on his cheeks. He whispered, "Forgive," unable to direct the plea to any human face. Safiya's flute answered with a lullaby older than the village. It reminded adults of cradle songs they once heard in mother's arms. Maryam unfurled her newly washed scroll. Where rain had blurred pigment, new patterns emerged, sun and moon no longer separate crescents but overlapping rings of twilight purple, encircling a center still blank yet radiant. Children pressed closer. One traced the empty center and giggled. "It feels like looking at the beginning of everything." A counselor coughed, hesitant. He asked the chief, still mud-caked, whether pavilion plans should proceed. The chief looked around, at villagers clustering around flame, music, water-streaked art, and saw no audience left for spectacle. He brushed muck from sleeves, found it futile, and muttered, "There will be another accounting." He trudged away, robe heavier with each step. Bashir helped laborers stack cedar planks to dry. He tied cloth around the obsidian shards so children wouldn't cut feet on its edges. He no longer wore indigo sash like a badge. He used it to wipe rainwater off Maryam's scroll frame, caring for pigment as if it were scripture. Night settled purple-blue. Street lanterns flickered on, but many villagers gathered near Layla's lamp instead, marveling how one flame welcomed all without demanding homage. Idris recited Surah Al-Isra, verses about truth and falsehood, how falsehood vanishes like foam while truth remains. The obsidian idol, fractured and silent, seemed suddenly smaller than the lamp's circle of light. Later, in Idris's courtyard, Maryam added final strokes to her scroll's blank center, a single Arabic word, Shukr, gratitude, painted in translucent white so subtle you could see it only from certain angles, when lamplight and moonlight braided. Safiya played notes so low they almost merged with pulse beats. Layla placed the lamp on a high shelf, flame reflected in her eyes. Bashir sat cross-legged, learning the flute's fingering, frowning over each squeak until laughter dissolved frustration. Idris watched, heart swelling, and thought how parables grow roots unseen until storm winds show which trees stand. The story of the daughters had reached a turning, but he sensed new tests ahead, whispers of vengeance, caravans carrying rumors of miracles or rebellions. Yet tonight the village belonged to gratitude, and that was wealth beyond counting. He raised hands in dua. O Allah, keeper of hearts, let every breath we draw tomorrow be debt only gratitude can repay. Wind rustled the acacia as if adding its amen. The moon climbed higher, spilling silver across mud that would dry to fertile soil by morning. And somewhere in the square the fractured idol settled with a soft clink, another tiny piece falling off, unheard by those already busy dreaming of rivers made of light. The dawn after the storm unfurled like parchment still damp at the edges, each crease glinting with possibilities the night had never dared to imagine. The pearls clung to the shattered obsidian, catching the first light and throwing it in fractured diamonds across the square. Where fear had once quickened every heartbeat, curiosity now fluttered in its place, a tentative bird testing the air after long captivity. Children tiptoed close enough to see their reflections multiply in the idol's broken skin, whispering that the pieces looked less like a fallen god and more like river glass waiting to be tumbled smooth. Idris walked the perimeter, sandals brushing puddles that had shrunk to mirrors of sky. He carried the mushaf pressed to his chest, an anchor against the ripples of change. As he read softly from Surah Al-Hajj, and whoever honors the symbols of Allah, it is truly from the piety of hearts, he felt the verse hover above the shards like a dove choosing where to land. Piety, he realized, was never about stone or wood. It was about what trembled unseen when lips shaped praise. Around him, neighbors murmured greetings instead of gossip, and each salam sounded less like habit and more like invitation. Maryam arrived with a fresh bundle of brushes tucked into her sash, intent on capturing the morning's fragile hush before human tongues cluttered it. She spread clean linen cloth beside the largest shard, the cloth so white it made the obsidian seem darker than night. As she bent, light split over her shoulders into bands of color her pigments could never hold on their own. Safiya came next, reed flute wrapped in silk to keep the instrument warm. She carried a new, deeper reed tuned during the storm to a register that settled behind sternums like remembered lullabies. Layla followed, holding the lamp high so its flame cast a corridor of warmth through the chilly square. Bashir trailed, hauling 2 buckets of rainwater to rinse brushes and thirsty throats alike. They worked without announcement. Maryam dipped her first brush into pure water, letting it streak the cloth in translucent arcs. She did not add color yet. She wanted the village to see that even water held potential for art when guided by gratitude. Safiya tested the new reed. One tentative note, resonant and low, rolled across the plaza like thunder's kinder sibling. Layla set the lamp on the cedar stump that once propped the idol, the flame humming steady, a heartbeat made visible. Word of the storm-cracked idol traveled beyond Daha Talkamar faster than any caravan. By midday, a dust-colored caravan from Kufa appeared at the horizon. Merchants, storytellers, even a philosopher in patched robes who claimed every town was a footnote in his endless book. Among them rode a provincial tax envoy named Zaid ibn Masru, dispatched by the regional governor to tally the festival's tariffs. Zaid expected drums, banners, and ledgers fat with coin. Instead, he found a marketplace half quiet, an idol in pieces, and a crowd gathered around a girl painting with rainwater. Official curiosity drew him closer. He cleared his throat, sharp, bureaucratic. What ordinance, he asked, permits public defacement of trade icons? Maryam looked up, brush poised. Water wrote this ordinance, she answered, with wind as witness. Confusion creased the envoy's brow. Idris stepped forward, offered salam, and recounted the storm, the fractures, and the village's new promise. Zaid listened, pen-scratching parchment, yet every time he tried to calculate loss, Safiya's music slipped between numbers and loosened their grip. A hush then parted to reveal the merchant from Basra, no longer in embroidered sash but simple wool. He carried a canvas sack, its bottom dark with rain-stained spice. Kneeling before Zaid, he spilled the sack, fragments of obsidian, the dagger, a coil of coin. This was my investment, he said, voice raw. Take it for the governor. It is worth less than the prayer I owe. Gasps rippled, a trader relinquishing profit of his own accord. Zaid's quill trembled. Such gestures rarely fit into fiscal columns. Idris quoted Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah accepts only from the righteous. The envoy's pen fell silent. Across the plaza, the council chief watched from a balcony draped in drying streamers. The mud stains on his robe had hardened into crusted evidence of yesterday's hubris. Yet pride, even cracked, rarely disappears, it only seeks new shapes. He summoned Fatima and 2 other counselors. "If we cannot lure wealth with spectacle," he said, voice hushed, "then we must do it with novelty. Pilgrims love tales of miracles. We shall curate this." He waved at the shattered idol as a holy relic. "Charge an offering to view it." Fatima recoiled. "You would sell repentance?" He answered, "Commerce civilizes chaos." Before deliberations could fester, drums rolled, not the processed thunder of yester festival, but a single skin drum struck thrice. Every head turned toward the mosque where the imam stood atop the minaret staircase. He called not the adhan, but a verse from Surah Al-Imran. "Let there arise from you a nation inviting to all that is good, advocating right and forbidding wrong." His voice carried wind lift, and the words rang like metal struck true. Counselors paused. The chief felt his plan unravel like wet twine. Below, Maryam's water arcs began to dry, edges curling into faint rainbows. She added pigment at last, thin washes of ochre and lapis that clung to drying edges, leaving the center clear as sky. Safiya shifted her melody into minor tones, calling hearts to introspection. Layla trimmed the wick, and flame brightened until fractured obsidian near it flickered, as though remembering what it had never been, a vessel of light. Bashir approached children gathered near the shards. He offered them reeds he'd cut behind the well, taught how each hollow tube whistles if you blow across its edge. Laughter rose, music without mastery, pure and startling. Mothers smiled, realizing some joys defy monetization. Fathers relaxed shoulders tight from years of bargaining. Bashir winked at Idris, as though confessing his own ledger now balanced differently. Zayd ibn Masra spent the afternoon interviewing villagers, cross-referencing ledgers, trying to quantify a truth that eluded arithmetic. He noted fewer idle sales but more shared meals, fewer complaints of thirst, and more buckets refilling neighbors' jars. He inspected the well, water line higher after the storm. A shepherd told him the sheep drank less brackish runoff this morning. Zayd recorded these as non-monetary shifts, a column he invented on the spot, then wondered if governance had overlooked a richer currency. Near dusk he reconvened with the council. The chief awaited vindication. Instead, Zayd declared that tax projections could be offset by increased long-term traffic drawn to demonstrations of communal piety and natural wonder, his bureaucratic translation of gratitude. The council, weary, accepted. The chief seethed but saw no profit in public anger. As stars rehearsed their ascent, villagers gathered for a meal in the square, everyone bringing something small: olives, dates, flatbread, goat cheese rinsed in herbs. A tapestry of lanterns fluttered overhead, each flame borrowed from Layla's lamp then carried carefully to its lantern bowl. No one commanded this ritual, it unfolded like instinct rediscovered. Idris watched sparks kiss dusk and felt the verse from Surah An Nahl breathe, light upon light. When plates emptied and talk mellowed, the philosopher from the Kufa caravan rose, clearing his throat with theatrical flair. "I have traveled," he proclaimed, "through kingdoms where men name stones as fathers and call clouds their sons. Rarely have I seen a stone's breaking birth such wholeness." He gestured toward Maryam's drying canvas, now shimmering in lantern glow. "Permit me to chronicle your tale, not as legend, but as compass for other towns." Idris nodded, cautioning, "Tell it true, neither magnifying nor diminishing. Parables lose power when wrapped in unnecessary gold." The philosopher bowed deeply, quill already itching. Safiya's flute invited the night, a mournful beginning that lifted into hope like birds startled into flight. Bashir accompanied her on a drum he'd traded for his indigo sash, beating a heartbeat that matched the hush of collective breathing. Children hummed, older voices joined, until song layered upon song in untrained harmony. It sounded like forgiveness moving among them. Layla placed her lamp at the center of the gathering, surrounding it with the tiniest shards of obsidian arranged into a ring that reflected flame in 100 miniature suns. She whispered Surah Al-Zumar, "Is it not his light that guides those who are blind?" A blind man from the caravan, hearing the verse, stepped forward, asked if he could warm hands at the lamp. Layla guided his palms close. "I cannot see it," he murmured, "yet I feel dawn." She answered, "Some lights travel by heat." Later, under acacia leaves trembling with starlight, Idris addressed his daughters. "Today," he said, "light spread without permission. Tomorrow, shadows may petition for return." Maryam nodded, already rinsing brushes, colors stained but also cleanse. Safiya rapped her flute. Even melodies need rest. Layla shielded her lamp's chimney, flame dimming to ember. "Will we be ready?" she asked. Idris recited, "Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear." They breathed the verse like shared air. Beyond the courtyard, the council chief sat alone, fingering a fresh ledger. No numbers filled it yet, only blank boxes itching for ink. He stared at the fractured idol, now cordoned but unattended, and wondered how a village could pivot around nothing more tangible than gratitude. His thoughts slithered toward new schemes. Fragments can be fashioned into amulets, rainwater bottled as miracle elixir. But for the first time, the ledger felt heavier than coin. Each blank box mirrored his own hollowness. He closed the bookend, with a sigh that startled even himself, whispered the opening of Surah Al-Fatiha, "In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful." The words tasted unfamiliar yet oddly nourishing. Near midnight, Zaid ibn Masr finalized his report beneath lantern glow. The village of Daha Talkamar exhibits a unique shift from idol-centric commerce to gratitude-centered community exchange, resulting in non-quantifiable assets such as social cohesion, water retention, and external interest from scholars and caravans. He sealed it with wax. Before sleeping, he stood by the lamp long enough for Layla to refill its oil. Their eyes met. Protocol forbade him to thank a child with state resources, so he offered what he could. "May Allah reward you," and Layla, unburdened by bureaucracy, replied, "And you as well." Storm-washed air carried scents of wet earth and cumin. Idris slipped into dreams where the cracked idol dissolved into black soil, and from each shard sprouted vines twining with luminescent leaves. The vines wove words in pale green fire. Shukr, Shukr, Shukr. He woke before dawn, certain that if he walked to the square he would find nothing overtly miraculous, yet everything subtly changed, because parables, when lived, rewrite the horizon molecule by molecule. By first light, clouds had rolled east, leaving the sky a polished turquoise bowl. The girls found the square already bustling, but no one varnished the idol or counted offerings. Instead, villagers built low benches around the largest shard, turning it into a makeshift wellside seat. Children chalked pictures on the cedar slabs: sun, moon, flute, lamp, scroll pictographs of the new narrative. The obsidian piece no longer glowered, it served. Idris recited Surah Al Nahl, and they give food, out of love for him, to the needy, the orphan, and the captive, saying, "We feed you only for the sake of Allah. We desire from you neither reward nor thanks." The verse billowed across the square like a fresh banner none could tear down. A new caravan arrived, lured by rumor of rain in a village where gratitude baked into bread. Traders dismounted, surprised to find no gate tax, only children offering cool water and stories. The philosopher sat with Quill, capturing each startled grin. Zaid prepared to depart, report safe in saddlebag, but he lingered when Safiya offered a farewell melody. He realized then that governance measured prosperity with coin because coin could be stacked. Yet hearing that flute, he wondered if wealth might also be counted in moments that lengthen the soul. That evening, as lanterns relit from Layla's flame, Maryam unveiled her completed cloth. Water arcs overlaid with ochre and lapis now framed a translucent center where Shukr shimmered like a secret only the heart could read. She offered it to the imam for the mosque's interior wall. The imam accepted, tears bright, saying art was a sermon pigment could preach. Safiya's melody accompanied the hanging, Layla's lamp guided nails into mud brick, and Bashir's drum signed the final flourish. When the cloth settled, wind stilled. For one long breath the village, caravan travelers, and even the council chief felt weightless, as though gratitude itself had reached down to lift the valley higher on the map of mercy. Idris whispered a dua older than any ledger, "O turner of hearts, keep ours firm upon your path." He felt daughter's hands slip into his, and Bashir's too, and soon palms linked behind palms until the square became one woven cloth of humanity. Somewhere within that tapestry the fractured idol sat forgotten, already gathering dust that would one day nourish a vine. And overhead the stars, unbribed, unbroken, wrote their silent ayat against the dark, "Wamatashuna illa and yasha Allah, you will not will unless Allah wills." The night passed under their guardianship, and gratitude burned steady, a lamp neither storm nor silence could quench. A murmur of wheels against sand carried through the dawn's cool hush, signaling visitors before the horizon could glow gold. Idris recognized the cadence, a governor's road train, iron-shod cart foremost, then horses, then banners snapping like pages turned by impatient fingers. The village roused itself without panic. Shopkeepers straightened awnings still perfumed by last night's communal meal. Children tucked chalk beneath ropes. Even the fractured obsidian shard, repurposed as a bench, received a quick sweep of palm fronds. Somewhere in the bustle, Maryam rinsed her brushes, Safiya tuned her deeper reed, and Layla polished the lamp's glass until it caught every stray photon like a net woven of sunrise. The entourage entered Daha Talkamar to no fanfare, only the soft chorus of villagers offering salam. Governor Khayr ad-Din dismounted, golden embroidery glittering at his cuffs. As the color of fresh date swept the square, noting the abandoned dais, the painted cloth inside the mosque doorway bearing the translucent word Shukr, and the myriad faces unafraid to meet his gaze. He had expected either riot or repentant quiet. He found instead an atmosphere tuned somewhere between contemplation and celebration, like a market day that remembered it was once a prayer. Zayd ibn Masrur stepped forward with his sealed report. The governor waved it aside for later. "I prefer to weigh parchment after meeting the ink," Khairuddin said, voice lilting yet edged. He approached Idris. "Sage, rumor paints you both incendiary and healer. Which cloak fits?" Idris replied, "A healer may draw heat, and fire can cauterize a wound." He bowed, offering a seat on the obsidian bench. The governor raised a brow but accepted. Cracked stone, cool from night air, groaned under silk weight. Maryam unfurled a small travel canvas, half-sketched lilies rising through fissured rock, and placed it at the governor's feet. "A welcome gift," she said, "unfinished so your arrival may color it." Khairuddin studied nascent strokes. "What hue would you assign to authority?" he asked. Maryam smiled gently. "Whatever shade gratitude casts today." The governor laughed, unexpected, uncourtly. The sound loosened stiff shoulders among his guards. Safiya lifted her flute and released a phrase simple enough to slip unnoticed between words, yet sturdy enough to bear silence on its back. The notes curled around cartwheels and camel bells, tempering brass and beast alike. Khairuddin shut his eyes, letting melody calibrate judgment. When he opened them, Layla was kneeling, lamp balanced on her palms. Its flame burned small, steady, a measured defiance of daylight. She murmured the opening of Surah An. "Did we not expand for you your chest?" A verse about burdens and their untying. The governor's gaze softened. He leaned closer, as though hearing an echo of younger prayers said before responsibility layered iron on his ribs. The council chief emerged, ledger in arms like armor, ready to justify losses and levy new ambitions. Yet Khairuddin motioned him to wait. The governor addressed the crowd. "I came fearing an uprising against lawful commerce. I find instead a village bending commerce toward compassion. Explain this alchemy." Idris gestured to his daughters. "Paint, music, and light revealed what idols concealed. Each blessing is already stamped with Allah's name, and gratitude is the only true mint." He recited, almost casually, Surah An Nahl, verses 72 to 74, weaving them through the dusty air, the sign of spouses and children, the folly of worshipping what cannot provide, the admonition not to forge similitudes for the divine. People listening found their chests echoing lines they now knew by heart, and the verses perched invisible on eaves and cart rails like migratory birds, unhurried to leave. Khairuddin rested an elbow on the cracked idol bench. "If gratitude is currency, how's it spent?" Bashir stepped forward, drum at his side. "Spent by giving water before price, by trading stories before weight, by striking drums that pace footsteps rather than drown heartbeat." He lifted his indigo-patched drum and tapped a rhythm mimicking rain that had healed stone. Laughter rippled. Even the council chief's mouth twitched before duty reclamped it. The merchant from Basra approached, carrying a modest wooden box. "My caravan will linger 2 days," he said, selling spices at fair measure, profits tied to the orphan fund. He opened the lid. Aromatic cardamom, cinnamon, and saffron nested inside like sunsets captured in shavings. The scent braided with date palm breeze, weaving a memory of nights when trade routes were pathways of stories, not greed. Khairuddin inclined his head, motioning Zayd to mark the pledge. "Wealth that flavors mercy," the governor noted, "is taxed first by angels." Cool scratch parchment. Figures tallied but did not shrink goodwill. The council chief trembled, ledger parchment suddenly flimsy as onion skin. He stepped forward, voice low. "And if pilgrims buy no idols and only drink prophetic verses, where will coffers fill?" Idris placed a gentle hand on the man's ink-stained ledger. "Perhaps coffers too must learn to drink verses." Then he walked away, leaving the chief staring at script blurred by rising tears he had not invited. The governor spent the afternoon turning wells brimming higher than in past seasons, attributing part to the storm, part to new communal watchfulness. Families now shared maintenance duties, patching cracks before loss. At each well he found a shard of obsidian set as a ladling stone, a silent monument reminding drinkers of thirst's former misdirection. Children explained this to him, a shining. Khairuddin listened to them more intently than to any council brief. Their simplicity pierced layers of protocol with surgical precision. When the tour circled back to the square, Maryam's canvas had dried enough for new color. Villagers each contributed a single brushstroke: amber, teal, sage, charcoal until lilies burst through rock and hues no single hand could have balanced. The governor, invited last, dipped brush into clear water and traced a nearly invisible vein of moisture along one petal. Authority, he murmured, should be seen only when light catches it. Those nearby held breath as water glimmered, then settled into transparency, thread-like yet essential. Layla positioned the lamp so its flame illuminated that hidden stroke, making it wink gold each time the wick danced. Applause rustled rather than roared, like palm fronds applauding breeze. Safiya began a melody carrying echoes of caravans moving at dusk, bells, hoof thuds, distant prayer calls. Bashir's drum answered with soft heartbeats. Elderly merchants found feet tapping unremembered youth rhythms. Young mothers swayed babies who in turn cooed at lantern sparks drifting overhead. And in the far corner, the council chief closed his ledger, slid it beneath the bench shard, and lifted palms skyward in silent dua none but Allah needed to hear. Night melted into a horizon of ember as villagers prepared a feast, not for the governor alone, but for any wanderer guided by starlight. Goat stew brewed with storm-harvested herbs, flatbread blistered on clay griddles, figs soaked in honey until they tasted of prophecy. Khayr ad-Din, shedding the weight of ceremonial cloak, ladled stew beside Bashir, laughing when spice steam made his eyes water. Zayd recorded taxation exemptions granted for communal hospitality initiatives, a category likely to baffle future accountants. Maryam unveiled a second scroll calligraphy of Surah Al-Hud. So ask forgiveness of your Lord, then repent. He will send the sky upon you with abundant rain. Villagers traced the letters, remembering stormwater tracing similar paths down ebony stone. Fatima retold her dream river, now realized in wells and hearts. The philosopher scribbled as quickly as her tongue poured image upon image, marveling how dreams and scripture braided into one rope strong enough to haul a community from abyss. Layla's lamp, center of every circle, never wavered. When its oil thinned, Khayr ad-Din offered scented almond oil from his personal travel stores. Layla accepted, whispering Bismillah before pouring. Flame flared, capturing Governor's reflection in the glass. He watched the shimmer but found no vanity there, only a reminder that power, too, could be fuel or smoke. Mid-meal, Idris rose. He did not stand on benches or daïses, he remained ground level, knees brushing dust. We are warned, he said, that forgetfulness follows gratitude the way night trails sunset. Let us therefore teach our children the signs, so when darkness arrives they recall the lamp. He recited the conclusion of Surah An Nahl's passage, do not set up rivals with Allah while you know. Around him nods rippled like small, firm waves nudging a boat toward open mercy. Safiya's flute answered with lullaby slow, coaxing breaths deeper. One by one lanterns dimmed, yet Layla's remained guardian bright, guiding travelers to sleeping mats, camels to tether posts, and the governor to a humble guest house once reserved for spice middlemen. He accepted without protest. Rank slept easily in Daha Talkamar tonight. Hours before dawn, Idris woke to the rustle of ledger pages. He found the council chief seated beneath acacia branches, rewriting entries by lamplight. Figures once frantic had softened into curved margins of ink. Each column now began with the phrase Alhamdulillah. He looked up, eyes rimmed crimson yet peaceful. I thought ledgers measured only coin, he confessed. But coin is a shadow chasing light. Idris placed a hand on his shoulder. A shadow can still guide you toward the fire that casts it. Together they watched flame flicker, rehearsing sunrise. When Farkal unfurled, villagers gathered in a congregation larger than any festival crowd the idol had drawn. Khayr ad-Din prayed shoulder to shoulder with camel drivers and potters, each whisper of Amin stitching hearts closer. As Imam's final salam drifted, birds cascaded skyward, and saffron light spilled over palm crowns, gilding every cracked shard and puddle remnant until the village shimmered like a mosaic only heaven could grout. The governor departed after breakfast of honeyed yogurt and minted tea, leaving a decree engraved on cedar. Daha Talkamar would hold an annual festival of gratitude, where commerce, art, and charity braided inseparably tax-exempt, interest-free. The decree bore his seal but also, for the first time in provincial records, a second seal etched by a child's hand, Layla's drawing of lamp and verse number 72. Caravans, hearing of such a festival, plotted new routes, scholars packed ink to chronicle transformation, poets tuned tongues to capture what ledger lines could not. Months passed in the span of a breath, as seasons do when washed with eyes newly rinsed. Rain visited again, steadier this time, and every drop striking the obsidian shards sang a chime only artists and repentant traders could hear. Maryam completed a cycle of 5 great cloths: water, fire, wind, earth, and the unseen. Safiya composed melodies to unveil each. Layla tended the eternal lamp, its glass now ringed by a mosaic of the tiniest idol fragments set in clay. Darkstone blooming around warm flame like night protecting dawn. Bashir, once swaggering skeptic, taught reed carving to youth, his hands no longer restless for applause but eager for collaboration. The merchant from Basra planted saffron bulbs beside the well. Come spring, purple petals would proclaim that prophet could perfume mercy rather than mask it. Zaid, promoted to chief auditor, introduced a new imperial column labeled Intangible Baraka, crediting Daha Talkamar as first contributor. One twilight, Idris closed his oldest mushaf and watched granddaughters, Maryam's little Amal splattered with carmine, Safiya's twins piping hollow bamboo, Layla's firstborn cradling a thumb-sized lamp, chase fireflies around the shard bench. He recalled the verse that had stirred the first morning of this tale. Among his signs is that he created for you spouses from yourselves, and from them he gave you children and grandchildren, and provided you good things. He let the memories settle like dust becoming soil, and he tasted its sweetness on his tongue. In the square, lanterns bobbed as villagers rehearsed for the inaugural festival of gratitude. No one spoke of idols anymore. Even memory of their weight felt distant, like a dream dissolving in glare. Yet the shards remained, neither hidden nor worshipped, serving as seats, art, reminders. That was the final miracle, not their destruction but their transformation, a lesson etched in veins of cooled volcanic glass that Allah can repurpose even our most misplaced devotions, if only we surrender them. The lamp flared brighter, coaxed by evening breeze, and Idris sensed night approaching without fear. Darkness, too, had its role. It revealed the endurance of flame and the journey of gratitude from whispered verse to lived mercy. He inhaled the mingled scents of saffron soil, rain-washed stone, lamp oil, and date palm wind. Each breath was a blessing counted, each exhale a blessing returned. Somewhere above, stars stitched unseen script across firmament, composing ayat read only by hearts awake enough to notice. And Daha Talkamar, once a village bent beneath the shadow of a mute idol, now stood taller than any monument, its name carried by caravans and quills as the place where gratitude learned to walk on human feet and light found vessels in simple hands.